Hey everyone, we'll just wait another minute or so and then we will start this session. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Kim Speers, and I'm the moderator for today's event. Are you prepared for career success? And I really wish I would have been able to attend such an event when I was finishing my studies or just, in my early years of my career. So happy to be part of this session. I am part of an amazing, and as I told them, a very well-oiled program committee with IPAC Victoria. And my full-time job is I'm a faculty member with the School of Public Administration at the University of Victoria. So on behalf of IPAC Victoria, the IPAC Victoria Program Committee, and IPAC National, thank you so much for joining us today. And a special shout out and thank you to Aaron Bellwood, Brian Marson, and Claudine Lowe for organizing this event. Before we begin the presentation today, I'm going to respectfully acknowledge the land I am on today, which is on the traditional and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people, and what some people refer to as Penticton. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all of the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me on National Indigenous Peoples Day in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the effect of residential schools, the 60s scoop, and colonialism on Indigenous families and communities, and to consider how we are and can each in our own way try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Now, before I introduce today's speakers, the format for today, there'll be approximately 30 minutes of comments from our guest speaker and the two panelists. And then we hope to leave about 30 minutes from questions from the virtual floor. And questions will take place at the end, not during the presentations. And I think that's about it, but just one thing, if you haven't done so already, please let us know your name and where you're calling from in the chat. And if you do have any questions you would like to ask the panelists or the guest speaker, please put that in the Q&A form, okay? So just on that note, I'm very pleased to introduce two shining new professionals who I've had the pleasure to meet. And they both work with the BC Ministry of Citizen Services. And I'll introduce them just a little bit more later on, but our panelists are Claudine Lowe and Vikas Verma. And now I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker, who will be first up to bat, and it is Manjit Bains, and she has over 25 years of progressive leadership experience in the public and private sectors, ranging from small businesses to organizations with over 400 staff and $90 million in annual expenditures. As a past vice president of corporate relations and a corporate secretary with Consumer Protection BC, Manjit was responsible for business development, media, and stakeholder relations, call center services, consumer education, and marketing and brand development. Manjit worked closely with the government on issues of consumer policy and legislation, such an important area. In addition to being a chartered professional accountant, Manjit also holds several business administration diplomas in finance and accounting from Camosun College. At this moment, I would like to very much welcome Manjit to this virtual platform and to begin her presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Speers. I'm just going to take 2 minutes just to bring up my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. And again, thank you, Dr. Speers. I'm quite excited to be back here, sharing a little bit more information about leadership with all of you. And in particular, sharing my leadership journey and some of the experiences I had along the way, and especially in my experience with having a mentor for the last almost 40 years. So I will get going. I'm going to just move through some slides here. And so we're really starting with, are you prepared for your career success? I've had a mentor, as I mentioned, for 40 years. And one of the things that he came up with over the last many years in all of his research that he was doing was this quote here, which I will let you read. But really at the very bottom here, it says, my question to you is, you might think you're well prepared for what you are doing right now, but will you be well prepared for the management and leadership responsibilities that lie ahead? So we're going to talk about that and get you thinking in a different kind of way and thinking in advance as you start off with your journey. So there's a number of things along the way here around helping new professionals like Claudine and Vikas get them ready to fly, and we want you to fly as well. But often the question that we get is, but how? How do we do that? And we're going to walk you through a couple of steps after sharing some research with you as well. My mentor, and I'll share with you how he became my mentor in a few slides here. Dr. Brian Marson did some research along with a number of other organizations that have done multiple research as well. There's usually a number of things that during that research that usually land at the very top in terms of what were the most important ways in which you learn to lead. And I can also attest to some of this in my leadership journey. Often we think that going to school and getting the degree and the letters behind our name are going to make us the leader or the CEO of an organization. And it may as well. What I would encourage you to do as you set that vision for yourself to get there is really consider the on-the-job experience. What job experience can you get now? Watching your bosses and other leaders rises to the top. Getting a mentor or coach rises to the top. Asking for or putting your hand up or just saying yes for special assignments and task forces or workshops or project teams that you could be on. Attending university or college or other professional development training that you might be able to take from various local sources. Taking some formal management or leadership training, and there's a lot of that now anywhere that you might want to take it at college or a university or locally. Asking for feedback, doing what's called 360 reviews, where you get your subordinates, your supervisors, your stakeholders, your leaders, your previous colleagues, providing some feedback on unanimously that you get candidly that helps you reflect on how you're doing as a leader. And of course, there's lots of other ways in terms of reaching out to your parents, doing some reading, and community resources as well. So along with some credentials, there's a number of other things that you can do to help your leadership journey. There's also this leadership sort of journey model that Dr. Brian Marston came up with as part of his research, and that has been supported by other research in the background. And I am very happy to speak to this model and share with you my leadership journey. But before I get that, I'll just walk you through sort of this 4-step process in terms of when you start off with your journey. You may start off as a professional or a subject matter expert in some training that you have taken, or just in a job that you have landed in. It can be in McDonald's, it can be in a retail clothing store, it can be in the private sector, it can be in the public sector, or a charitable organization. You may start off doing some professional work and be supervised by others. And you may or may not be a part of a team. As you progress through your journey, most likely, if you become a really good subject matter expert, you might get tapped on the shoulder to lead a group of people. And so you might be put in a supervisor role, but this is where you have to be careful, because you may be really good as a professional, as a subject matter expert, and you will be asked to lead a team of people. And when you get there, you might say to yourself, now what do I do? I've never supervised. And this is where your mentors and training and professional development and other family members may be able to help you, where you begin to supervise a team of people. And then as you get better and better as a supervisor, you will be tapped on the shoulder again, or you will begin to now set a vision for yourself where you want more responsibility. And you now start to apply for manager kinds of roles, where you will manage and direct a part of a program area within an organization, where you will not only be supervising people, but now you might be given a budget, or you might be asked to come up with a business plan for that group of people. And then you'll be asked to measure how well your group is doing in terms of reaching their outcomes and outputs. And along with management comes all the people responsibilities that you will not have planned for when you were a subject matter expert. And it is a positive experience, but it is also a challenging experience when you begin to manage and run into people management opportunities and challenges. And then there's always this administration piece that you have to take on, which you will realize that takes up a lot of your time. And then there will be human resource functions that you have to manage on a day-to-day basis as you're trying to manage the business side. So it's quite a balancing act as well. And most likely, as you're progressing through your journey here, there's a lot of things that are happening in your personal life. You're probably doing some traveling, you're probably buying a car, you're buying a house, you're entering into a relationship with a partner, you may or may be adopting or having kids, or taking on some family responsibilities as well, and caring for your parents. And you're now beginning to juggle a lot of things in your life. You've got a mortgage, you've got family, people are relying on you, and you still want to continue your career. And this is where you get into some of the leadership responsibilities, because now you're progressing through your journey. And now you're really being asked to step way up at a 10,000-foot level, where you may have more significant program area responsibilities. You may now have multiple managers or directors reporting to you, and you have a significant budget that you're responsible for, or a whole organization that you're leading as well. So while you're managing all of those family progression personally and now professionally as well. So you might go from a subject matter expert, you might skip being a supervisor, you might go straight to a manager, you might skip going from a professional to a leader as well. So you don't necessarily have to progress in this ladder. I went through this journey. I went through the professional, supervisor, and manager. And then I stepped all the way back to a professional, and I started my leadership journey again, but with different organizations. Sometimes you might go from a supervisor and a manager, and you might make a sideways step as opposed to an upwards mobility. So promotion isn't always going up. Promotion can sometimes being just going sideways in the same kind of position, but in a different organization. So I'm just going to go to the next slide to begin starting to share my journey as well with you. So I'm going to take the same steps and actually speak about myself in a little bit more detail. So I started back in, I'm going to take you all the way back to 1984. I had come to Camosun College and started my business diplomas, finished my first business diploma, started working in retail as a sales clerk, and worked my way up through an assistant manager, and then became a manager. So my assistant manager role was a supervisor role, and then I became a manager of a retail clothing store in Tilkamal in Victoria. And I had about 5 or 6 people reporting to me. We were managing about sales of about 20 to 30,000 every single month. And so I was responsible for the whole staffing, making sure the store opened, closed, reporting, managing stock, security, and all of those sorts of things. And as I worked through my career there for a couple of years, from 1984 to 1986, 87, I realized I wanted more. So you start to get this craving once you've had the supervisory and manager sort of responsibility. I realized I wanted more, and I wasn't sure that I wanted that more to be in retail. So I went back to school. I went back to Camosun, got another diploma. First one was in finance, the second one was in accounting. And then I made a commitment in that I wanted to work with government, because government was the #1 employer in Victoria. I tried applying for jobs, not one single interview. I looked at postings, put in my resume, not one single interview. And so I started just talking to people. I started talking to my friends, friends of friends, family members, and I had some advice. And my one single advice that I got back then was, well, if you can't get a job where you want, just go volunteer. I was about 20 years old, and I thought, what does even volunteer actually mean? They said, go volunteer in your community, because the people who are doing the hiring are also volunteering as leaders in some of these charitable organizations. So I asked people, where would I even go volunteer? Somebody mentioned the United Way, because the United Way is in every location, probably across Canada. And it's an organization that does a lot of fundraising and gives money to other charitable organizations. So I thought, oh, what a great place to start. So I phoned them up. I said, hi, I'd like to volunteer. It was August of 1986. And they said, well, why don't you come to our wine and cheese party? We're having it at Harbour Towers here in Victoria. I said, absolutely. I arrived and I didn't know why I was actually there. I didn't really understand what a wine and cheese party was. I don't even think I had ever drank wine before, never had wine and cheese together. So I arrived, and it was a bit daunting. There were a lot of people there, and they were all mingling, and they had wine in their hands, and cheese, and chatting away. I didn't know a single person there. So I walked into this room. There was an individual who was sitting on a chair. He was by himself. I was by myself. I moved a little bit closer to him, and he just finally looked up at me. I think I kind of looked pretty sad. He looked up at me and said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here to meet people because I want a job in government. And he immediately got up, said, follow me, walked me into the middle of the room, and introduced me to this very tall, handsome man with a beard and a goatee, and he was full of life. And he said, I'd like to introduce you to my boss, Brian Marson, the Comptroller General of British Columbia. And then he walked away. And I looked up at this very tall, handsome man, and I thought, oh my goodness, the Comptroller General. And I honestly did not know what a Comptroller General was at that time. Anyways, he put out his hand, introduced himself. I said hello, and he asked me why I was there. I repeated it. He took out his business card. He said some very nice things, provided me his business card, and he said, call me for tea. I said, I will. And then we separated and I moved along. I don't know if I ever actually had the wine and cheese. I don't actually know if I really understood what the fundraising launch there was for the United Way, but I became very committed to the United Way after that, and did a lot of work for them in the background in terms of looking at financial statements for charitable organizations that were looking for money from the United Way to help run their program areas to help the community. And I went away from that event and I pulled up Brian's card many times. I actually picked up the phone. Tried to phone him 4 times, 3 times, 2 times. I phoned and I hung up before somebody answered. The 3rd time, somebody answered and I hung up because I was just too chicken because I didn't know what to do. The 4th time I phoned, and his executive assistant, Val, answered the call. And I just said, I just went candid. I said, hi, my name is Manjit Bains. I met Brian Marson at an event recently, provided me his business card, suggested I phone him up, and invited me for tea. She said, okay. She arranged the meeting. The next thing I know, within a week, I am in his office, which was gigantic. I came in, and this is the Comptroller General of British Columbia, one busy man. He gets up and starts boiling water and actually makes me a cup of tea. And we sit down. That was 1986. And he's on the call today. And my leadership journey, I owe so much to him because he became my mentor at that time. And I did not ever use the word mentor. I didn't know what a mentor was, but I'll explain to you my leadership journey and how he helped me along the way here. He opened doors. He was available to me during my ups and downs. And there were a lot of ups and downs during my career. And each of those times, either he would phone me at the perfect time or I would phone him and he'd say, hey, I was thinking about you. We would meet for coffee, we would meet for lunch, we would meet for a drink, we'd meet for dinner. And we just developed this really great sort of professional relationship where we could just phone each other and talk. And I would share with him my experience. He would always give me some nuggets of advice, or he'd open doors to go and chat with people. And that's sort of where I progressed. I finally got a door that opened in the Ministry of Tourism. He said, why don't you go and talk to so-and-so? I did. She was very open to me. She set up a meeting, and on the spot, she said, I'm hiring you. I'm going to take you down to my manager. She introduced me to the manager, and she said, I need you to hire Manjit today. And I got the job as a courier, mail courier, and a file clerk. So I left my manager job at Reitman's, and I started in government at the lowest classification you could imagine, running mail every single day from building to building to building. Then I worked my way up as an accounts payable clerk. I became a financial administrative officer in the Ministry of Tourism. I then transitioned over to the Ministry of Attorney General. And during that period of time, I was taking some night classes. I was taking some supervisory training in the background. And every once in a while, I would phone Brian and we would get together. And he mapped out my journey way before I even knew what my journey was. So it was interesting to have somebody who had so much confidence and could see 20 years ahead of you, and all you were focused on was today. And there were a number of times where I got stuck. I just didn't know what to do. Call them up, we would chat, and I felt so motivated and I felt so inspired. And I felt like I could get out of a bit of a rut every time I had a chat with him. So then I became a supervisor. I moved over from being in the finance and admin area in the Ministry of Attorney General, where I worked in financial operations, I worked in accounts payable, I helped with budget, I developed policy and procedures on how to data enter into a new financial system we were launching. And then I got an opportunity to apply for a job over at Court Services Branch as the manager of management services there. And so I went from in a financial central kind of role into a program area within the Ministry of Attorney General in the Court Services Branch. And so over there, I began to be responsible for a group of people and a group of functions. Now I was responsible for the headquarters budget of the Court Services Branch in headquarters, and we were responsible for all the administration activities as well. And the court services branch had multiple, up to 45 courthouses across British Columbia. So now I became a part of a bigger organization. And from there, I then started getting tapped on the shoulder. I didn't apply for a job from about 1989 to about 2004. So it was through my experience, my networking, and I began volunteering. Brian wanted me to help the organization with developing a financial services course. I said, absolutely, sure, I will. I continued to volunteer at the United Way. Absolutely. I was asked to do projects or participate on teams. I would say, absolutely. I never said no. Any opportunity came up, I said yes. Then I got tapped on the shoulder. My supervisor at Court Services Branch. I went on my honeymoon. I came back. The first message was from my supervisor at Court Services Branch. He said, I'm being transferred over to the Information Technology Services Division. He said, I want you to come with me. I said, okay. I'd only been at Court Services for 6 months. I said, okay. So I went over there and the Information Technology Services Division had been over budget by $5 million every year, and nobody understood why. So I helped figure that out. Then I was going down the stairs at 910 Government Street one day for lunch, and there was an individual that was in the stairwell at the same time. And she said, wait, are you Manjit Bains? I said, yes, I am. She introduced herself. She said, I work in the criminal justice branch, and I've heard about you because you can make financial information very easy to understand, because my Assistant Deputy Attorney General heard you present at the executive committee, and he wants you to join our organization. I said, okay. So I went over there as the manager of finance admin. They reclassified the job. It became a director position. I now became responsible for helping to be responsible for finance administration across the criminal justice branch, 35 offices, again, across British Columbia, because in most cases they were in courthouses as well. And now I was responsible for not only supervising people within 910 Government Street in Victoria, but now I was responsible for supervising people in Prince George and in Kamloops and in Vancouver and Nanaimo and so forth. And I continued to sort of meet with Brian sort of in the background, and he was now taking off in his career and doing different things, but we were staying in touch, virtually at that time as well. And then I moved into some director roles. And it was when I was at the criminal justice branch. You also need to recognize, as you're moving up this ladder, there's a lot of things personally going on with you as well. I got married. I had 2 kids. I was helping my parents. I had a car, I had a house, I had a mortgage, had all of those things in the background as well. So when I came back from my second maternity leave, I thought, you know what? I'm not so sure I'm so worried about moving up the ladder, but I think I'm ready for a change, because I helped the organization come up with a strategic plan, and I wanted somebody else to now implement that, and it was time for me to move on. So then I took a lateral transfer to the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. And there I was responsible for setting up an organization called Consumer Protection BC. And what it was responsible for was taking delegation from government to enforce consumer law. And so I had to shut down a division within government and transfer the employees while setting up this new entity outside of government, which was a 2-year exercise to do. Once I set up the organization, I knew I was doing myself out of a job, but I had enough confidence that I had enough of a network that I had built, because throughout my career, not only was I meeting with Brian, but I was meeting with a number of other supervisors and leaders and a number of other people I had met outside of work as well. And I kept in touch with them. And so when I set up that organization, it was being launched for July 4th, 2004. I knew that I was no longer going to have a job because I was within government. But so to my surprise, the new chief executive officer with Consumer Protection BC offered me the vice president of corporate relations. And he offered me a job that, if I had looked at the job profile or job description, I would never have applied for it, because there's no way I had the experience to do that role. but he had confidence in me to do the role. So I said yes again. And I became VP of Corporate Relations. They're responsible for media relations, industry relations, consumer relations. I was the media spokesperson. By this point, I had gone and got my Chartered Professional Accounting designation as a certified management accountant. I was an accountant. I was responsible for budget. What did I know about media spokesperson or consumer relations or industry relations and build and business development? But he had confidence in me, and I just trusted him because he believed in me. I took on that role. I had a fantastic journey for about 10 years at Consumer Protection BC in that role. But then I realized as our kids were getting older that I still wanted something different. And what I had always wanted to do was teach. And by that point, board governance became my passion. And so again, I took a sideways step and I opened up a consulting business, which was the reason I had come to Victoria and to get my business degree. So I set up my business, my management consulting business. I began to teach, and I started to partner with a bunch of IT companies in town because there was major transformation happening within government, and they always needed a person who had the leadership experience and could take care of the people and the change management side of things. So that's my practice. I help organizations and people get where they're going. And so I parachute in, partner with organizations and teams, and focus on leadership and people. And support them through their journey. So that's my leadership experience that I've had over the last 4 decades. And I've been very grateful for the leaders that I had and the mentors that I had who believed in me. So I encourage you so much to volunteer, go meet people, go network as much as you can, and get some mentors along the way. And your leadership journey will fall into place almost by itself. Yeah. Okay. So next slide, Dr. Spears, should I pass it back to you? Just unmute.
Sorry about that. That always has to happen during one a session, doesn't it? Just before I do, there's just a quick question here from the floor. Hi, Manjit. It's an awesome and inspiring story. Absolutely. I'm just curious, how long did it take you to climb up the ladder in your government journey from the bottom to the top?
So I started there in 1987. First job, January 19th, 1987. You don't forget that first day. And I became the vice president of corporate relations and consumer protection in BC in 2004.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe I'll just ask one question for now, and then I'll open it up to the panelists. I'm going to ask about maybe one piece of advice. So what's the most significant lesson or piece of advice that you have learned along the way and that you can give to new professionals starting out on a career in the public service?
It's so hard, Dr. Spears, to restrict it to one, right?
Okay, two.
I do have a number here, and I'll pick a couple here. One is stay positive. Stay positive throughout your whole journey. It's very easy to sometimes deviate from that because of your personal experience that you're having, or the groups and teams that you may end up with, or the job that you're doing. Just stay positive as much as possible. And then the second thing is build your network. And you can do that in so many different ways. Sometimes we get stuck on ourselves and we get stuck on the jobs that we're going to do. Go broader than that and create your network. And your network can be through sports teams. It can be through volunteering. It can be through IPAC. It can be through other associations or your alumni through the university or college. Go volunteer and build your network. So I'll maybe leave it at that, Dr. Speers.
Sure. And I'll just ask one more question and then I'll move to the panel. Isn't it scary to move to something that is very new to you when you move sideways and when there's a lot going on in your personal life? Example, having your own family. I love this next question. Is it boredom or thirst for growth that pushed you to do it? And I'll ask, or a midlife crisis, that many of us have. Some have two or three, such as myself, and wondering what you want to do. But I think if I can say, one thing about working in the public service, and as you've demonstrated, there's so many opportunities. So and that arise or you can make happen. So I guess just what pushed you, what motivated you to keep moving forward?
That's a really good question. And as I mentioned in my leadership journey, there were two pivotal moments where that sideways journey was more important to me than upward mobility. And so the first time was when I had spent about 8 years at the criminal justice branch, and I had done a lot of things there. Originally, when I walked in there was an internal audit that had been done of the organization, and that it had pointed out there were a number of things that they needed to improve. So over 8 years, I had focused on that internal audit and strengthening finance and admin within the criminal justice branch. And like I said, I got married, had 2 kids during those 8 years as well. And when I came back from my mat leave, I had time to reflect while I was off, although it was sleepless reflection after you've had your second child, but you still had time to reflect and get away from work for a while. And I came back and led a strategic planning process. And then at that time, I realized, you know what, if I'm going to commit to this organization to help implement that strategic plan, I have to really commit for 3 years. And is that what I want to do? And is this where I want to do it? And at that time, I was being asked to consider upward mobility and promotions. And I knew at that time my focus was my kids, my husband, and my family. And I wanted to be home for dinner every night. And so at that time, I thought I couldn't stay there because I couldn't travel anymore. And I wanted to be in Victoria. So I took a job, I took a lateral transfer, same classification, and I moved into this director of business transformation role to help transition consumer services outside of the provincial government. So that was one reason. And then the second reason, when I made that movement as a vice president of corporate relations, and then left and set up my management consulting organization. At that time, our kids were getting older and they were going off to university. And I had always wanted to teach, and I had wanted to do a number of things. And so I thought, I had a great run up for 10 years in Consumer Protection BC. It was excelling as an organization, and it was so great to see how well it was doing. But at some point, you just get ready to want to move on and try something different, and had the guts and the courage to do it. And with the support of family, with the support of other mentors and family members as well. And I took the leap. And it has been incredible since I opened up my management consulting business. I did the whole get the business card, set up the website. I don't think I've had to use that once. It's all word of mouth and recommendations and tapping on the shoulder. But I always worry, well, where's my next client going to be? But I got this advice from a consultant colleague. He says, don't worry, there's enough work for you for decades ahead. And he's so right. Every time one client job is ending, somebody phones at me and needs help. So it's been an incredible journey. And I was able to teach, and I was able to balance my life in the background as well, which became more and more important.
Yep. In a very enviable spot here. So there's a few more questions, but I want to move on to our 2 rising superstars, Claudine and Vikas. And Claudine, if you could just, for about 5 minutes, talk a little bit about your own journey, where you're at right now. And then if you also, and then once you do that, I'll pass it on to Vikas and then come back to you for a question for Manjit, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kim, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Manjit, for the inspiring presentation and for sharing your own career journey with us. It's truly inspiring. So good afternoon, everybody, especially to my coworkers that are currently tuning in from BC Registries and Citizen Services. Hello. And hello as well to my fellow new professionals. I'm Claudine. I'm an immigrant from the Philippines and I'm currently a new professional. I'm a clerk with and a public servant with the Ministry of Citizen Services BC Registry branch. So in my this position I've obtained 3 years ago in 2019 through an external hiring competition and right after completing my program in University of Victoria. So I've been in this position for 3 years. My initial responsibilities included photocopying documents, scanning boxes of files, and generally supporting my team in their administrative requirements. So those are my initial responsibilities. But then over the years, I find myself being given additional responsibilities, such as training new staff on on our daily procedure for several lines of businesses. I've been asked to create or and also modified manuals. I've been asked to participate in modernization initiative of our branch of modernizing our application. So I find myself conducting info sessions, presentations, and providing high-level user feedback to whoever is requesting this from me. So suddenly, I find myself as a subject matter expert from photocopying and just scanning. I become a subject matter expert and as well as an employee engagement champion in our branch. And I've been often asked to participate in meetings. So I would be in a meeting with managers, business analysts. I believe some of them are currently tuning in right now. IT developers, policy analysts, and they're asking feedbacks, high level feedbacks, and I have to be able to to speak in a professional way to them. So now I'm faced with public speaking, presentation, also training new employees, dealing with middle managers, speaking to stakeholders such as law firms, accounting firms, all levels of the government from local, provincially, municipal, federal regarding our new application. So I'm faced with this new challenges. And I sometimes feel that I lack the preparation and the confidence for these added responsibilities. And I think I could benefit from mentorship. So that's a little bit about myself. And I just have a one question for you, Manjit, about mentorship, which I'll ask after Vikas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudine. And Vikas, if you can talk a little bit about your experience, that'd be great.
Yes. Hi there. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak in the panel. It's been a great honor to be sharing screen with our honorable guest speaker, Manjit Bains, our moderator, Dr. Kim Speers, and everyone on the call who's here to learn and interact. So my name is Vikas, and I moved to Canada in 2016 to pursue my postgraduate diploma in business administration from Kamusin College. And so after completing my course, I joined BC Public Service back in 2018 as registry's support clerk. So I've done everything that Claudine is doing or have done over the years. So I worked on that role in 6 months, and then got the opportunity to work in the IT department as an IT analyst. One of the motivating story for me to highlight here is that my manager by that time, Mrs. Minnie Wong, who was my mentor at the time, she's now retired. And she used to come to my desk every day, and she came to know that I have some computer science background from India. So she used to come every day on my desk and be like, hey, you need to apply for this IT operations position right now. And being new to the government, being new to Canada, I didn't there was always a culture difference and work ethics. That is basically there was a big shift in culture as I used to work in India. So I was a bit scared, and I had so many questions, and she was there to answer. And for the first week or so, I didn't apply for any job because I really wanted to focus on the job in hand and wanted to excel in the job that I was currently doing. But every second day, she used to come to my desk and would motivate me to apply for the job, guide me through the process, and also give me the pointers to be able to prepare for the interview. And that's how I apply for the next job, which was an IT analyst. And I got the job because of her mentorship and her, continuous support and assistance. And so I enjoyed working in IT department for 3 years as an IT clerk, IT analyst. And then recently in April 2022, I moved to the database team and being designated as the product owner of analytics in BC registries and online services. So my role here is to basically collect, interpret data, and make it available to all our important stakeholders to be able to make the informed decisions about the businesses. So my journey is a bit, I can say, I relate to Manjit Bains a lot, starting having my own career in India and then moving to Canada for better opportunities, and then starting from the bottom again, did all the courses and got my postgraduate diploma, and then moving on, just climbing up the ladder one position at a time. And I'm really grateful that we have so many leaders and managers around in BC registries who are continuously supporting and mentoring us. So just wanted to highlight the few things that I have learned over the course of 4 years in my role in BC public service. Service with heart is our motto that we all follow here, and basically it talks about assume good intentions of everyone by default. So I noticed that the best leaders I've ever worked with, they always come with their full selves, and always they treat everyone around them, regardless of rank, with kindness. So it's a way of being, how can I help you by default, and if they are and noticing and calling out any injustice or inequities wherever they see it. And there is always an openness to learning and understanding different cultures and perspectives. And also, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I always actively look for opportunities to push for change from wherever in the public service hierarchy you are in, or life in general, and demonstrate everything example by example. And the last thing is just like do it yourself. So don't wait for anyone to start the process or initiate the process. You are in the position, so do it yourself.
Well, thank you so much. Just the reactions to both you and Claudine. I don't know if you saw the hearts and clapping that was done, but yeah, it was so wonderful to see and so well deserved and so motivating and inspiring. And BC Public Service is, I think, very lucky to have you there and stepping towards leadership positions. Claudine, perhaps you'd like to ask your question now then to Manjit.
For sure. Thank you. So, Manjit, earlier you've touched on mentorship and how to choose a mentor on life and career journey. So, just in your experience, do you have any advice for us on how to ask someone to be your mentor, and how did you maintain a successful, continuous session with them? Thank you.
Thank you, Claudine, and thank you to both of you and Vikas for sharing your leadership journey that you have started on as well. Fabulous experience that both of you have already. Great question around choosing a mentor and maintaining that relationship as well. As you can see from my experience, mine just fell into place as a result of, like Vika said, is getting out there, making it happen, showing up at an event that I had no idea what it was all about, and follow through. There's so many people that will offer informally to be your mentor. The job is on you to follow up. Make the call. Don't hang up like I did 3 times. Make the call. People are so willing to meet you for coffee, meet you for lunch, or just have a conversation. People are really interested in passing along their experience and guidance and steering and guiding. So you have to make time, and you have to make it a priority. In some of the organizations, like the provincial government, they do have more formal mentor-mentee programs that, if you probably check on the BC Public Service Agency website or your own internet website, that your own organizations might actually have formal programs where you can sign up as a mentee. And don't rule out the fact that I think the two of you could also be mentors yourself to others entering into the public service based on your experience that you have.
Great, thank you. I was just going to mention that as well, Manjit. Yeah, I don't think Claudine and Vikas might be aware of just what advice what great advice they have to offer as well, and how they probably already help some people in the audience. So glad you mentioned that. Vikas, do you have a question then for Manjit?
Yes, I do. So Manjit, my question to you is, since you mentioned that you have taken few steps or few decisions in life, moving to the lateral and sideways journey to and then later to commit yourself with the consumer protection team that you set up. So how did you bring that courage and conviction to such risky situations, and what advice would you give us?
Yeah, no, very good question. I think in both situations, I think it just happened. And so I was maybe fortunate from that perspective, but I think after being in a job, normally when I was going through my career, I was in a job probably for no longer than 2 years. Ended up in the criminal justice branch for 8 years. Partly it was because personally, got married, had 2 kids, and I wanted stability at that time. And I always thought that I was probably going to become an ADM or executive financial officer, but there was something that when I had time to reflect and get away from work, I realized maybe that wasn't my journey. I actually wanted to go from being responsible for, I decided that I didn't want to always be responsible for corporate services, meaning finance, HR, administration, and facilities and IT. I realized I wanted to go work in operations. What that meant was I had to make a leap sideways to go get some operational experience, to go set this organization up, because that's something I wouldn't have done before. So I spent 2 years going through the whole cabinet submission, treasury board submission, talking to stakeholders, engaging leaders in the organization. I set a business plan to set up this organization outside of government, and then I set it up. So I actually delivered on something very significant and tangible. So I had a critical success, right? That I could, market for myself that I had done something. And then after being a vice president for 10 years, at that time, I realized I wasn't actually interested in becoming a CEO anymore, but that had always been my dream for years. And then as my kids got older and I started to network and do volunteer work, I actually got very interested in board governance. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I can go teach, I can consult, I can sit on boards. And right now I sit on 2 federal committees called departmental audit committees for the Statistics Canada and Treasury Board Canada Secretariat. So it kind of just logically kind of happened, but I didn't do it without the support. I had the support of my husband. I had the support of my children. I had the support of other mentors and other leaders in the background. So I didn't just jump all by myself into this new world. I did do that consulting and engaging with my network to build that confidence and have the courage. And to have it is very important, right? Because otherwise you'll never get that opportunity.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a question from the floor, and this one interests me quite a bit, Manjit, because I've had to struggle just a few times, but I'm just recalling one situation, and somebody gave me a great piece of advice along the way, and it says, sometimes you bang your head against the wall, and sometimes that wall is concrete. So you have to learn when you can make a change, or how much you can put up with and know when to go. So somebody asked this question: within your experiences as a leader, have you had to leave a leadership position because of conflict of values?
I have not, but I have coached a lot of people in those situations as well, where they have either had difficulties with their leaders, or staff in other areas that they have to work very closely with, or they're just fundamentally disagree with some decisions that are made. And in that situation where I am mentoring others, I will meet with them. I will try to ask them questions. I'll try to get them to think of options. I try to encourage them on, how they might resolve it, go take some training, learn to have difficult conversations, get some conflict mediation. But at the end of the day, we are in control of one thing. And the one thing that they're usually in control of is that they can decide to leave. And they can continue on with their journey if they're unsuccessful and they've tried everything that they can. And I've seen people take multiple paths there. Some of them have stuck it out. Some of them have taken a lateral transfer. Some of them have just left the organization. But yeah, no, a lot of people will pound their forehead on a brick wall, etc. But you don't need to. Like, you can take control of your own situation.
Yeah, I know. Just I'm Victoria's in one of my classes, and I'm teaching communication and engagement. And Manjit, just one of the lessons I've learned, and I'm trying to apply to others, is, for me, one of the biggest learning moments was just learning how to deal with the very different and many different types of personalities in the workplace. And so we're talking about office politics, the pros and the cons, and topics such as you mentioned, having those difficult conversations, and all different types of interpersonal conversations, whether it's intercultural, intergenerational, and so forth. So yeah, and like you said from the outset, it's not just about the letters behind your name. It's really important about how you interact with others. And I love what Vikas had to say, just service with a heart and treating people with kindness and respect can go such a long way in your career as well.
Absolutely.
Just another question, Manjit, this is from an anonymous attendee. Thanks so much for sharing your leadership journey. Very inspiring. How were you able to establish yourself as an expert leader through your business? What are some steps you took to create the organizational partnerships?
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Great question. And so as I left, a permanent job to go off and set up a consulting company, that was pretty scary. It was pretty daunting, because the number one thing when you set up a business is you have to figure out, well, how are you going to get the business? So I did exactly what I'm providing you advice on. I went and leveraged my network that I had built over 28 years. And so I actually opened up a binder. I had the tabs, I put the people's names down, and I thought, who are all the people that I'm going to go out and communicate with? And I just did the LinkedIn connections. I asked people if I could go for coffee and lunches and drinks. And I just got out there and I started to basically start again and knocking on doors saying, here's what I'm doing. Do you have any advice? Do you have any suggestions? And it was through that process I got connected to actually a very close professional personal friend that I had about 2 decades ago, but I had lost, links with because I was getting married, I had kids, I, was going up the ladder. She and I connected, and she connected me to a consulting company. I got my first job there. And from that was in 2014, 2015. And I have not had an opportunity where I haven't had any work since. But what I've continued to do there, even when I'm working with clients, I continue to go have lunches and coffees, and I've continued to volunteer as a board member on multiple boards here in Victoria as well, and giving back to the community and attending functions like this and being a part of associations as well. And through all of that, it's just been through word of mouth. People are just finding out the work that I am doing. And I'm aligning myself with a number of companies in town, so I can either go be retained directly myself, or I come through other companies who are bringing me in to be a part of their team as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, because I know there's always quite a few students that are interested in pursuing a consulting career as well. And maybe one more question, and Manjit, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this. Brian might want to step in. I know, and I might have some few comments, but this might be the last question here. We're running up against 1 o'clock here. But Rosella notes, thank you, Manjit, for sharing your amazing and inspiring journey. I am fairly new here in Victoria, BC. I wonder if there's a mentor-mentee program where newcomers can be signed up on.
It's a really good question. I know in the past that there have been some websites that I think the provincial government has actually been setting up for newcomers. I don't know if it's at the provincial level or at the federal level, but maybe we could actually take that away and see if we can do a little bit of research and respond to that. But I think there is. I just don't have the details on that right now with me.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to send us your email, if you do want us to follow up on that question, please put your email. I know Brian and I have chatted before. I know UVic, the public admin program, we had a mentorship program life before COVID, right? And the students and the mentors appreciated so much. And I have to say, just kind of someone who helped organize, manage it, it was wonderful to see the relationships that developed and that continue to this day. Now, Brian and I were chatting just about developing a mentor-menteeship. UVic, we're going to try it again, but perhaps we can try to do something within IPAC Victoria as well, if there's not something within the BC Public Service that suits people's needs. So if we can say, we'll get back to you on that, because there were quite a few questions. Just asking about, how do I get a mentor and so forth. And Manjit, you gave lots of good ideas. And if there's any one that would like something a little bit more formal and perhaps of a matchmaking type of exercise, perhaps that's something that UVic can do. But that time went by really quickly, so we'll have to close it off. So thanks, Manjit, Vikas and Claudine, and the audience for your energy, participation, and presence today. Preparing for a profession in the public service can be sought in many ways, as you've seen today, whether it be via the technical and trade route, the policy domain, or administrative management interests. And you can come from business, engineering, the health sector. There's just so many different ways to enter the public service these days. I do have to toot the MPA or the Masters of Public Admin or Masters of Public Policy degrees, though, since it does focus on preparing students for a career in the public service and often complements other degrees. And indeed, we have seen a diverse representation of disciplines in our MPA and MPP programs across Canada. And if you are interested in pursuing that type of degree, please go to the Canadian Association on Programs in Public Administration, or please contact me at this School of Public Admin at UVic. We wish you all of the best, and please join us again for IPAC events in the future. And if you have any ideas for events as well, please let us know. If you'd like to get involved, be a volunteer, that would be wonderful. And if you're not a member of IPAC, please consider joining. It is a great place to learn, as perhaps you've experienced today, meet new people and build relationships. So hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we are now ending this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.